Welcome, everybody, back to the Convo Couch. Pasta Jardula here.
Hey, I'm Fiorella. I'm trying to share the Rumble link since I didn't have it.
I put it in the private chat on the StreamYard.
I can't access that
You
on
can't?
my end. No.
Okay.
So give me 1 second. I'm going to share this. I've said that
Did
many
you get it already?
times.
I know.
Yes. So sharing the Rumble. Pardon me, guys.
All right, you got it? Okay.
Yeah. In between arguing with Kim Iverson on Twitter.
Are you arguing with her still about the whole Putin
Of
thing?
Of course. I still feel people have so many rose-colored glasses about RFK Jr. And I think people are making the same mistakes that people made with Bernie Sanders, including myself. And I think people are so desperate and hungry for a hero, they're willing to overlook a lot of issues. And it's different to have voted for Hillary Clinton. You know, Kim has, Pasta has. I never did. But once it's a whole other different thing to come from the establishment, to have a CIA infested in your family. Just the whole Zionist mentality of him is a huge problem for me. I can't forego that. For some people, it may be a secondary issue, but for me, that's a huge issue. Just the whole positioning on Russia, Ukraine, in spite of the fact he still condemns it. It's the whole wishy-washy fence sitting that I feel like at the end of the day, you're willing to compromise to say the right thing. The fact that we don't have fair elections, nobody's still addressing that to me. They're just pretending that's just going to evolve. And this idea, again, that plagues, I think, the American public, that they need to be saved by some sort of hero, that they're going to be saved by somebody, is really detrimental to the people coming together and doing something. That's why we don't see that in the United States. We don't see people coming together and doing something to demand their government change. That you don't see people demanding up in France, going and begging another political figure to run for president to get rid of Macron, and like them saying, "Oh, you're our only hope, Macron," like, or whoever is the other political figure, right? You don't see that happening in all these other countries. You see them doing that when it comes to election time, but in between those times, the people are organizing. They're building up. They're doing things that will create outside organization to change their government. They're not sitting back every 4 years or 5 years or 6 years, however long the term is, and then saying, well, I hope this guy helps us out. Like, that mentality is one of the things that keeps Americans, I think, entirely just in the same cycle. And it's a really toxic, endless cycle. And you can say whatever you want, and you can say, oh, well, he's a great candidate, whatever. He's definitely the best candidate, especially saying he's condemning he wants the release of Julian Assange, something Sanders did not do. And I say that, I recognize that he's the best candidate. However, he's still running as a Democrat, everything else I stated. And I do think, like, people think that that's just going to solve the problem. It's not, because the issue is systemic. The issue is the entities are vastly too powerful and big, and you're never going to solve that problem by putting all of your hopes, or most of your hopes, in one political figure coming from a political dynasty family. Granted, a family that did challenge the status quo, which his uncle, of course, was murdered for it, right? But he's not his uncle. He's not his father. And the reality is things have shifted, and there's a lot of infiltration and co-option. So I do think people need to be mindful of their desperation in finding these hero-like figures and putting all their eggs on one of them, saving them. And in between, they need to be working towards doing that themselves. Nobody's going to save the American people but the American people. No president, no hero is going to do that, because the entities are far too large for any one person to do that. And it's that simple. So I do think, like, I see a lot of, like, the same things I saw with Sanders, and because we've lived through it, I see it. And I hate to be the bad guy here. I just don't think. I think people are being irrational about that. It's just too emotionally attached because of the COVID situation, because of everything he did with that. Which, again, I commend. I totally commend.
Okay. So obviously, you don't know what was going on this morning. Steve took the day off. I had issues like with
No.
the Rockfin and all this other stuff this morning. And I couldn't not Rockfin, excuse me, the StreamYard and shit, because I was trying to get into our old account. I couldn't get in there, so I had to come to our account, rebuild everything. I had no thumbnail. It was like this whole crazy mess, but I got it done.
Mhm.
I started a little late. Amber King jumped on. We had some great conversations. She went late to work, and then Wyatt came on towards the end. The last half hour we dedicated towards RFK. In fact, I brought your tweet, and obviously, I don't want to say obviously, but you're here on this one point. Everything you just said about
Yeah.
What's going on. I think the whole Putin is a thug, he is a gangster thing kind of like ticked you off in a wrong way. And a lot of people, it seems like a form of fence sitting. I get it. And I even said, well, that's a way of manufacturing consent. You can say all these other things. But
Right.
Wyatt did point out that everything he said leading up to that is everything that we would say. He even talked about the Victoria Newman phone call.
Of
And
course.
here is my question, and somebody said this to me too as well. I'm going to pose this question with you because you did even mention he's the best candidate. I even think he's a better candidate now than Bernie Sanders was. Like, you know what I'm saying? I really believe he's ahead of where Bernie Sanders is by far. He has his things, and once again, I think it's not worth putting all our energy and time. I don't want to say it's not worth putting our energy and all our time in there, but once again, the American people have to save ourselves. And I realize this too as well. I never really supported Bernie Sanders. I never really supported Tulsi Gabbard. I supported certain issues that I thought they were there with me on. And once they went away from those issues, I no longer supported them. But they were just the vessels for the issues. So here's my question to you. Because on your tweet, you were in one place. Wyatt was making some great points. He was like, everything he was saying before that, he was almost making it cool to talk, now cooler or acceptable to talk about anti-war stances inside the Democratic Party. And when people support him within the Democratic Party and he doesn't become the nomination, it becomes Joe Biden. Those people aren't going to vote for Joe Biden. He's more aligned with Trump on the issues than he is with Joe Biden. So here's my question I am posing to you. What do we have to lose by supporting RFK? And I just want to make it be known, I'm going to be voting third party. But I think it's okay if you're going to vote in the Democratic Party and you want to vote for RFK and you think that's good to support him. Yeah, we don't have free elections, but I still believe in doing the process. The same way I'd feel like if all the Republicans running, I would still probably choose Trump out of all of them. You know what I'm saying? So what do we have to lose by supporting RFK?
You have to lose the fact that you still don't understand the game here. The game is to continue getting people riled up and excited every 4 years to support the theatrical show, the America's Got Talent, which is the presidential election. We know it's not a legitimate election. He knows it's not a legitimate election. And that's one of the things, I think he's the most honest candidate we've had in a long time in those terms. But you lose the ability to really understand that your vote doesn't matter. Your vote doesn't count. And I'm not saying this in a defeatist way. I'm saying this in the reality way. Electoralism won't save the American public, but it seems people forget that every 4 years. Whether it was with Marianne Williamson, the same sort of Bernie-esque supporters, or whether it's for these people. Now, if people believe that he can wake up Democratic voters by saying all this stuff, you said he was making it, sound cool. I hate to break it to y'all, but it's pretty much mainstream now. You have to realize it's become mainstream to be anti-establishment. And that's what people don't see. It's become so mainstream that all of these progressives have become anti-establishment, but really are they? They have co-opted the language of the actual anti-establishment, and they have used it to continue to push people back into the establishment. And that's intelligence at play here. That's literally the same thing as it ever was, a tale as old as time. They've co-opted the language of the revolutionaries. They did that to pretty much all the activists during the anti-war movement of the 1960s, and they've continued to do it until now with the Bernie Sanders movement. You've seen it. Do you all who are so intelligent and anti-establishment think that they aren't and they haven't done that with the COVID narrative, that they haven't done that with the Russia-Ukraine narrative, that they haven't gone 5-10 steps ahead of you and seen that, oh my gosh, these people who are, against the status quo narrative on Russia-Ukraine are way, like, we can't stop this. We have to find a different way to contain it. And this isn't some conspiratorial thing. This is, if you read how the intelligence apparatus works, you will understand this is what they do. They study anti-establishment revolutionaries. They co-opt their language, they co-opt their organizations, they destroy them from the inside. Why do you think the establishment began talking about COVID and anti-COVID narratives on Fox? Fox is a mainstream channel. In spite of Tucker Carlson leaving, which really does show there is some sort of disarray. Of course, there always is. Even among the elite, there's going to be disagreements. In spite of all of that, it's become mainstream to be anti-mainstream. And so what you have to understand is you can't just rely on the very simplistic reductionist of, well, if this person is against this, and that means that they're great. Like, you have to go beyond that. You have to look at the past, the present, and also not what they're saying, but also what they're not saying. What is safe to say? What is acceptable to say at this moment? And unfortunately, it's very nuanced, and a lot of people can't do that. They become either cheerleaders or complete antagonists of whoever it is or whatever the issue is. And that is something that I see happening with the COVID narrative and the Russia-Ukraine narrative. It is extremely popular now to talk about Russia in a very positive way, or not necessarily in a positive way, but in to talk against the US narrative on it. This is why we've seen the right talk about that. Remember when you were called a conspiracy theorist and certain popular people on YouTube said it was a conspiracy smoothie to talk about the World Economic Forum and the Fourth Industrial Revolution? And now that's how they make their money. That's how they get their views. And they just attach the word George Soros onto that, and they go off on it because it's popular to do so, not because it's necessarily like the accurate thing or whatever. And so I do think people have to be mindful of these things going forward, because the strategy has shifted. It's no longer that you're going to be opposed. Is they're going to say, oh, well, for example, Bashar al-Assad is a brutal dictator, the Assad regime, but the Syrian people shouldn't blah, blah, blah. And those of us who have gone to these countries, who are really, I don't know, like, who understand that the fence sitting is a sort of opening for the manufacturing consent. For example, you can even talk about Chomsky, right? A lot of people are like, yeah, Chomsky talked to Epstein, but everything he's done and blah, blah, blah. So it's just kind of like, I just don't trust that. That's a really big issue to me when you're going to fence it. And I understand the tactics of running as a Democrat. There's a two-party system, a uniparty system basically in the US, and he has to run as a Democrat. So I get it. That's the mindset. But again, so now you're having a bunch of people vote Democrat who were perhaps independent, who were perhaps green or whatever the hell they were, and now they're voting as a Democrat. Do you see how you're bringing in people?
Well, they got to register as a Democrat in some states just to even vote for him.
So who ends up winning here? The Democratic Party? Are you naive enough to think that the Democratic Party isn't going to gather that information from those voters like they did with Bernie Sanders, that they're not going to get access to that? I mean, there's just so many things, and one can say a lot of things, but at the end of the day, when you get into power, are you going to challenge it? And again, 9 times out of 10, they literally don't. They literally go back. And if you're already making concessions before you become president, I know for a fact you're going to make concessions once you are. And I just think, again, Pasta, the one thing that off the bat, we don't have fair elections. None of that is being talked about really at that level. I do think he's a good candidate in terms of being able to unite a lot of people on the right and some people on the left and some people across party lines. And I think that is something that we haven't seen in a long time. But do I think that they would allow, the establishment would allow anybody that's an actual challenge to win the presidency. No, I don't think so. And you have the same thing to lose that we did before with Bernie. I mean, the same thing, that you're just putting all your eggs into one person. People are going to get really excited about this. It's understandable. I get it. I just think nothing happens after 2024. Literally nothing happens. People just don't do anything.
Yeah.
And again, I pose to you what the French are doing, what other people in other countries that we've gone to have done for years.
Yeah.
They didn't just go out and vote when it was time to vote for the presidency. And between that time, they organized themselves to be able to do so, to be able to have fair elections, to understand their government. I don't see the American people doing that. I just see the American people say, oh, well, he's the only one that can save us. It's the same type of language that I saw with Bernie Sanders. And even though RFK is not Jr. is not Bernie Sanders, the people supporting him have the same hopes that he will save them. And that's my issue.
Cool.
As well.
All right, let me take a stab at this, because let me just give
this isn't even on our topic, and I just
we're gonna have to cut it out and put it out there anyways, because this is what a lot of people are talking about. We had your tweet this morning on. Wyatt and I talked about it. We showed it. Like I said, I was kind of in between where you stand and where he stands. That Putin is a thug, is a gangster, isn't the only thing I concentrated on. Everything else he said before that, and this is something that Wyatt had pointed out, that was something we would say. Even mentioning Victoria Nuland in that conversation, which to me is just great. He's going to the actual root of the problem. Let me start off by saying this much, because you also said we have almost the same thing to lose. Before we get to that, let me say, when it comes to when people decide to start talking about politics, we can't help that. Yes, they come around every 4 years when there's a presidential election, and that's when the majority of people spend what little time they have out of their normal lives talking about politics, but they also talk about the issues. And for some people, each election cycle might be the only time they start the process of getting involved in growing. So we can't help that.
No, you can't. They go back to sleep after that. They go back to sleep after that.
Yeah, let me finish. We can't help that, though.
Yeah,
that's what I'm trying to say. We can't force people to be like they are in France. We can't force people to be like they are in Colombia. Yeah. We can't force the fact, and we can't change the fact that stuff in the mainstream gets more attention than anything else, even though we can't even get in the mainstream. But we can't help the fact that that's where it is the most powerful. So we got to kick, scream, yell, do whatever we can to do to get our information into the mainstream and use any mechanism whatsoever. We can't change those things that you talked about. Unfortunately, we are a nation of a different type of breed of people. We are the most propagandized. We are the most consumed. Not only just consumed with entertainment, distractions, shopping, consumerism, capitalism, and stuff like that. We're consumed with just trying to keep a roof over our head and food on the table. And people don't understand that. Especially when we go to other places like Cuba, we talk to people and they're like, I'm like, oh, you don't understand the homeless problem we got. I told somebody that we had 750,000 homeless people. They couldn't fucking believe it, right? But that's who we are as a nation, and we can't help it. So if that is the battleground we're in, we have to fight the war in that particular battleground. Secondly, the language, right, that he is bringing to the table. When it comes to the Democrats, that's not there. It's not present. They're still not there's nobody within the Democratic Party acknowledging what happened in 2014 in Ukraine. He's doing that. Yes, he kind of defers to that fence-sitting of, Putin's a gangster and a thug, and that is kind of the whole, you have to do that to kind of get in the door. I don't agree with it whatsoever, fam. I'm there with you there. But still, the stuff he still talks about, he's by far the best anti-war candidate out there for quite some time. And in all due respect,
he's anti-war now? He's anti-war?
Oh, he's definitely way. I think RFK is anti-war.
Has he voted legislation for you to say he's anti-war?
Though? No. But look at his rhetoric. Look what he said. I mean, what he said. He even said that Putin didn't want that war. I don't want that war. We don't want that war. Everything he said in that is we don't want that war. You know what I'm saying? And
his rhetoric is anti-war. Yeah,
exactly. And by far, and compared to Marianne Williamson's rhetoric, compared to Joe Biden's rhetoric. If he can get that voice within the Democratic Party, and people are going to talk about that, because here's the thing, and Clyburn was on TV the other day, you can't avoid the conversations now. They're being asked, what do you think about RFK? He's polling at 19% now. What do you think about they're not going to get away from it. So there's going to be conversations within the Democratic Party about foreign policy, about war, about mandates, about these things. This is language that is not there. And that's why I think he's miles beyond where Bernie was at this particular time. And here's the thing. We don't have the same thing we had to lose with Bernie Sanders. At the end of the day, Bernie Sanders was always, Donald Trump is the most racist, sexist, terriblest president on the face of the earth. You got to vote for Hillary Clinton no matter what. RFK, it doesn't even make it. Even if he tried to say that shit, you had to vote for Joe Biden. His supporters who are following him or going to follow him to vote for him are never going to vote for anybody in that Democratic Party. It's either him or Donald Trump. Because the majority of the people who follow RFK are because of that book, The Real Anthony Fauci. So we don't have anything to lose. In fact, I think we have more things to gain. We just can't change the political landscape. We can't change the battlefield we're in. Even though it sucks, we're still dealing with a nation of Americans. And I think his presence within this whole Democratic Party, and I don't like it at all, because I said I'm not going to go vote for anybody in the Democratic Party. I said I wouldn't do it. And here's the thing.
People who said they wouldn't do it are going to do it.
What's
because
that?
He's running. But people who said that they weren't going to do it are going to do it because he's running. That's what you have to lose. Again, yeah, you're right. Maybe some of those people will leave the Democratic Party again, but then again, you're not creating anything new. You're doing the same thing and expecting different results. Again, it's become popular to be anti-establishment. Look, the reason Donald Trump got so far ahead is because he posed as an anti-establishment outsider. That's literally why some people still prefer Trump, because they see him as an outsider. This whole thing about, it's nothing new. He's literally just doing it in the Democratic Party instead of the Republican Party.
Different conversations to the Democratic Party, different rhetoric within the Democratic Party. Like I said, if it's cool to talk about having an anti-war stance, so be it. And here's the thing. We have to give him a chance to see where he is on elections. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to be speaking. Gerald Celente invited me to go speak at his event on the 27th of May in Kingston, New York, which is just about an hour south of Albany by car. He's going to be inviting RFK. Hopefully a chance RFK will go. I don't know, but maybe, because I know Gerald is close to Judge Napolitano and close to RFK. So, hopefully maybe he'll go, but who knows? I don't know. I'm just assuming that. But like I said,
if he endorses Joe Biden, what will you say? If he endorses Joe Biden, what will you all say? I mean, seriously, serious question. When he endorses Joe Biden, like if he loses a nomination, he's going to endorse Joe Biden.
We don't know that.
What is that? Okay.
I mean, if he signs that promissory note too, as well, I don't. Look, people say that Tulsi Gabbard endorsed Joe Biden. I didn't think she really endorsed him that much. Yeah, but I don't think that was like she didn't go right
on video.
She didn't do what Bernie Sanders did. Bernie Sanders went riding shotgun and got the band back together. You know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah,
half-assed,
but she still endorsed him.
Much. She said it one time and she moved the hell on.
Yeah, she still endorsed him, Pasta.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter. She still endorsed him.
I didn't see a lot of her people going to vote for Joe Biden. You know what I'm saying?
And what good? Okay, and what did that do? What good did that do?
The only Biden person I know, the only Tulsi person I know that voted for Joe Biden, I can't even remember her name. And if I brought her up,
but Pasta,
yeah,
Joe Biden is still president because
Tulsi Gabbard endorsed him.
You're missing the point here. Joe Biden is still president because of our
fake
elections. System. Whether or not her supporters, Pasta, you can't. Whether or not her supporters literally voted for him or not because of her endorsement is irrelevant. Like literally, Joe Biden is president because we don't have fair elections, and I still think Americans don't believe that. They still think if they vote harder, they will elect somebody worthwhile, and that's just not going to happen. And again, you're doing the same thing and expecting different results. It's just a different candidate. But again, at the end of the day, candidates either submit or they're pushed out. And so you have to find a different way that's not through electoral politics to make any change. But people wrongfully think they can change things with an RFK victory, even though he's already compromising on a lot of things. And again, he's running for president. So we do all have the ability, and we should be extremely watchful, especially with everything that's happened the last few years. You can't just pretend that all the stuff that happened didn't happen. And again, for some people, his stance on Israel-Palestine is not a big deal. For me, it is. And for others, it is. And the whole, his involvement with the CIA and Clinton, that's weird to me. And I support his book. I support everybody, everything he did during that. I think he's the best candidate. But again, we're still not addressing the systemic issues on that. And I think people are getting a little bit too excited. And and not really changing the dynamic of what happens every 4 years. So that's just my bit on that. I mean, sure, I don't care if people support him or not. I'm just stating that I think, when people start pretending he's like this figure that's going to take down the establishment, I just don't see that. I think that's hopeful, wishful thinking.
Fam, that's a great way to start off the show. By the way, I hope you guys really like my little Cuban video that I put up before. That was like my little own personal little Cuban video.
Yeah.
So that was just my pictures I had, and I screen sharing was canceled. Make sure you click on. All right. By the way, right out of the gate, first time in the first minute, Rumble rants, death to tyrants, respect, pasta, and fee, stay real. That's all we know how to do is stay real. I don't know. Like I said, I'm going to, even though I know you guys probably don't even agree with my voting because I know the elections aren't fair, but like I said, I'm not going to let them take away the process, which is the people's choice, the people's voice. I will create a paper trail. I will fight for the areas that are messed up. And here's the thing, we got to create data as well, so we know where and how and when they're going to cheat us. So that's my thoughts on that. And if you're going to support the RFK in the Democratic Party, hey, I support you for doing so. I just think you have to have a nuanced approach about it, an understanding of it. We should probably have Wyatt on to have this discussion because it would be an interesting discussion, and maybe Kim too. That would be great. Wyatt, you, me, Kim, we'll have a fun time at this one, man. We should do that. But
2
yeah.
pro RFK, 3 pro. Okay, you're neutral, but I'm not even anti. I'm literally
I'm more pro at this point.
All the issues. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You, Wyatt, and Kim are all pro.
Yeah.
Like
what he's doing within the Democratic Party, I think, is important. Yeah, I do.
Yeah, I
know.
I think we're having the wrong conversation here. Yeah, it's you don't have fair elections, so I don't. Yeah.
But I know. But
the Democratic Party can be changed suddenly now.
No.
The Democratic
Party
can be changed.
No way. But getting the issues to the table and getting people to speak about the issues is what's important. Getting people's mindset of what's going on is important. If we just have this attitude,
do you think the neoliberals who call you anti-vaxxer are going to change their mind?
Yeah, I think some will. I think there are some people that were on the fence about a lot of those things. But I mean,
maybe.
I don't know. We got to swing the bat. We got to try. Either way, I don't begrudge you either way. I just think it's important because, unfortunately, a lot of our society only talks about politics every 4 years. And politics, if you don't talk about politics will talk about you. They'll do you, right?
Family, it's like you have a really bad child, right? And so you're just gonna you're just not gonna punish them until every 5 years. So are they ever going to know what they did wrong? Are they ever going to learn from their mistake if they keep doing it? It just doesn't make sense to me. We can say, well, we can't change how people are, but again, the accountability factor to the rest of the world that we're hurting, that the government is hurting, and the people are just standing idly by waiting to elect someone better it's just kind of like, well, we can't help ourselves, we're just dumb and whatever. It's just very okay, we're just gonna try before years. I know and it's just very I don't know, it's just wrong. It's just very selfish, in my opinion. People think that they can't do anything and they become helpless, and that in a way puts accountability on somebody else. And Americans need to take the accountability. Everybody in every other country has taken accountability and literally gone outside the electoral system to do something. Until the American people do that, even if you elected by miracle somebody like RFK, you'll see that things will not change, because it's not going to come from the electoral system. We've established that a long time ago.
I hear you, fam. Let's get on to the next topic, because you got a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah.
We was in Cuba, and some of us got detained. I was on a flight coming back on Wednesday, I believe. Was I on Wednesday's flight? You're coming back. There were some people from the People's Forum that were there in the waiting room with me. They also got detained. Urgent today, multiple members of our youth delegation to Cuba were detained and held for hours by the U.S. Customs Border Patrol after returning. Despite having traveled legally, we have been harassed and held secondary questions upon arrival in the airport in Miami in EWR. I don't know what that is. That might be New Jersey. and I think they were trying to save
Yes.
Fort Lauderdale. Our phones were
No.
wrongfully searched and seized by the CBP, Customs Border Patrol. This is outrageous behavior. This outrageous behavior seeks to intimidate us and criminalize our right to travel and exchange. We demand the release of our remaining comrades. We will not be moved. Our commitment is to end the U.S. blockade of Cuba. Will only grow. Fam, we were on the same flight, a lot of us, and we were sitting in the
Yeah.
room. I was wearing the same hat. And I was really at a point where I was about to lose my shit. Like, at first I was cool. I was calm. And they started pulling some of the guys from the People's Forum in. And you could see they were going into the room. And then they were coming back into our other waiting room from the interrogation room. They were going into the interrogation room, coming back in, and they were handed a piece of paper. So I guess they were not willing to say anything or speak, and they pissed these guys off. They kept skipping me. I said, "Are you going to call me now? I'm going to get skipped." He's like, "There's no rotation." Eventually he came in, and I'm not just saying this, you know what I'm saying? Like, I was planning on what I was going to say. I was pissed off. I was 2.5 hours in there. But when I got in there, I kind of had that conversation, and we're not going to play the clip, but family, you saw I put it in there. I talked about the movie Heat. The movie Heat was with Robert De Niro and Al Pacino, where Al Pacino played the cop, Robert De Niro played the crook. It was a big movie because they'd never been on screen together at the same time. They both were in The Godfather 2, but played different segments in different time periods. So this was like the big movie for Italians, where Pacino and De Niro together. And they had this just incredible, unique scene where they go and they sit down in a diner together, and they know who each other are, and they have a very calm, cordial conversation. And that's the type of conversation I had in the room with the two customs officers and another plainclothes officer. I don't know what division he was a part of, but that's the kind of, I just let them know. I understood they had every piece of information on me, and I had told them what I do. I told them I'm an activist and a journalist. And because they had said, it's illegal to go to Cuba as a tourist. And I said, you can't go as a journalist? Oh, we didn't know you're a journalist. And I immediately said, come on, guys. Stop pulling my chain. You're going to Google me for 2 seconds, see everything that's going on. And plus, fam, I think we probably had a common friend in that room. Did we not?
Yeah. So, so the story, the plot thickens, right? And hey, like, to the officer's credit, he was very nice, and he was very, calm. But they know who we are. They know
Yeah.
who we are. So basically, backtrack a few days. I landed in at the Florida Fort Lauderdale airport. Okay, and I landed there because I had a long way from Moscow, right? And I was, instead of just flying straight to Cuba, because it would have been later, I was just going to make a pit stop in Florida and spend the night, and then go in the morning, have some rest, because traveling is exhausting. And so I did that. I landed, and I was like, "Fam, I'm in your side of town, blah blah blah." He's like, "Okay, I can come pick you up." First of all, the line for US citizens to get through customs was 2 hours long, over 2 hours long. And the line for non-citizens was about half as long or more. So I don't really know the benefit of having a US passport. Like, normally when I was in the EU and when I was in most other places, the EU people, they sped through and whatever. Like, when you're an American citizen, you land at the airport, you're gonna wait for a while. So it took forever, and I was exhausted. This is like after hours and hours of traveling, and I'm already tired. So I get to the little window, and there's an officer there in officer clothing, and he starts, he finds my visa eventually. And when they find that visa, it's pretty much game over. Like, they freak out. And so the reason why I was pulled aside was not for Cuba. This is before I even went to Cuba. This is Russia, right? And so they see this Russian visa. So what are you doing in Russia? Well, I live in Russia, and I also, come back to the United States. He's like, "So what do you do?" I'm like, "Well, I'm a journalist." And he's like, "For what company?" And then I tell him, and then suddenly I'm selected randomly for a secondary suitcase inspection is what I was told. Suddenly. So
Yeah.
it's random after they know that I live and work in Russia, right? So that's bullshit. We know that's bullshit, guys. Don't bullshit me. So then we're taken to this little back area, probably the same area Pasta was at. And I'm waiting there for like another 20 minutes for somebody to come. And he goes in the back, the same officer goes in the back, brings another person, and then he finally brings this man. I think it was the same man that was talking to Pasta. And he has, I think it says Homeland Security or DHS on his uniform. And so he's like, hey, I'm going to interview you. And so they start with the suitcase thing, kind of to like get it out of the way and say, yes, we're inspecting your suitcase. Yes, yeah. What am I going to bring from Russia? Like, yeah. So he starts going through pretty much everything on my suitcase, asks me questions about where it comes from and blah, blah, blah. And it's very nice, overly nice in some ways. And whatever. So we do all that. And then I'm like, okay, so then I had a feeling, obviously, that wasn't it. So then he's like, yeah, so we're going to go through this interview. And what I mean by interview, we're just going to ask you some questions. They don't really tell you what they're going to ask you. And so he was like, if you have to tell somebody that you're going to be, who's going to pick you up, I'll let them know. And so, I was like, yeah, it's going to be a minute, fam, blah, blah, blah. So then I go into the room. And he's like, I can't tell you exactly how much time. It could be 5 minutes. It could be more than 15 minutes. It could be super long. So then he goes and like starts asking me questions, literally like what I graduated, what I was doing, what I graduated with, a degree, where I'm living, what I'm doing for a living, more. And like somehow it comes up that I'm having somebody pick me up, and he asked me who, and I said his name. I gave him Pasta's name and number and his real name. And then and so then it comes out, we have an independent YouTube media show, and we do a lot of trips around Latin America and blah blah blah. And so he like goes and finds the combo couch on YouTube. Like, so he's probably, you can probably see this video. And so then it's like, okay, more questions about, he mentioned the Answer Coalition. If I knew them, I'm like, yeah, I know them. I didn't say I don't really love a lot of them, but
Ask me the same
they're
thing.
there.
Like, these guys in there? I'm like, yeah.
We're not best friends. But yeah. And so then like he proceeds to, say, oh, I have a friend who thinks that if, the US wasn't so aggressive and NATO wouldn't have expanded, this conflict wouldn't have began. He was trying to get me to say my opinion, and you could find my opinion within 2 seconds, guys. Like, everybody knows my opinion. But of course, like, I'm not trying to get political, because I don't want this to go on forever. And so I'm just like, okay, well, yeah, like I could agree with that. Or, I kind of, and same thing with Cuba, about Latin America, these situations. And I hadn't mentioned I was going to Cuba because, or frankly, I was hoping like I was allowed to go to Cuba, because I didn't know like how the process was going to be. And so eventually, after, a while, at least 30 minutes or more, he finally lets me go, takes down my social media, takes down my my family's information, my parents' number, like a lot of the stuff. Like, it's, and I the way the questions were asked, I had a feeling they knew who I was. And again, it would take 2 seconds to know. And so it's, it's kind of like what Pasta said. We're like circling around the issue. I wasn't directly asked very much about Russia. I wasn't directly asked much about anything, to be honest. My phone wasn't confiscated. Again, I did go as a journalist. A lot of these people are going as activists, so they do have more, I would say, if you're an activist, you're obviously fighting for a cause. As a journalist, you might have your personal opinion, but the way I was pulled was sort of questioning. I wasn't in Cuba. I was just in the United States, a citizen coming back from being in Russia. So it was a little different. And so that happened. And so then the next day, when I do go on my flight to Cuba, I'm literally going to the corridor to go take my seat on the plane in Cuba. Lo and behold, same guy is there. He's like, oh, Fiorella. And again, he's like really friendly. And I'm like, I'm like, are you following me? He's like, no, like, and so I'm just like, okay. And so then, I go about my way. And then when I came back to a different airport and I was fine.
Yeah.
So
It's funny they do ask
that's
you those
happened.
questions. They just try to get normal with you. That's why I'm saying it was like that movie, The Heat, where they're just De Niro and Pacino, even though they're opposite sides of the spectrum. They're just sitting down having a conversation. And usually that in the movies, the crook never meets the criminal unless they're firing at each other or trying to arrest each other or kill each other. In this particular situation, it was like, Pacino is the cop. He pulls over De Niro after De Niro in a couple previous scenes finds out who he is. Like, in other words, Pacino catches on to De Niro because De Niro's the crook.
Yeah.
And then De Niro pulls off this kind of scene where they're looking for something, and Pacino and the cops are looking at them. And as they're trying to figure out what De Niro's doing, De Niro's looking at them, and Pacino realizes, oh, this motherfucker knows me. We know who we are now. So they sit down and they just have this normal conversation. Crook versus criminal. And this is what it's kind of feel like. These guys are working for the State Department. We're anti-State Department. We got an abolish the CIA freaking shirt there out there and everything. And we're having these conversations. And after we're talking about why I do this stuff, because he was like, well, the plainclothes officer was in there, young guy. It was like, asking some questions. And my pretty much statement was like, look, I ain't working for you. I ain't working for them. I'm working for myself. I'm an independent journalist. I'm trying to get into the Cuban elections within 2 years. I was just there for their last elections. You can look at my passport. You can see where I traveled, when I traveled, and all those times I traveled, there was an election going on. That's what I'm doing, and that's what I'm trying to get closer to in Cuba. But in Cuba, it takes a little time. So we went to the International Press Division, and we're trying to work the ropes to see if we can get into that next election in a couple of years. When I go there, I do some activism. I go and I bring balls and I give them to the kids to play baseball with. And that's what I'm journaling over there is, something that's going to humanize us. You know what I'm saying, gentlemen? And they were like, yeah, cool. And then you get that kind of question. Well, what do you think about that government over there? And I said, listen, bud, I said, got a little anarchism in my blood. I think everybody should have a healthy skepticism of their government and all governments, but that's just me. But that's not my business over there. That's their national sovereignty. I'm worried about the shit over here. You're mentioning to me that you wish you didn't have to deal with so many problems because so many Cubans are trying to come in now with the situations. I said, isn't the economic blockade and everything that's going on really the major problem? Well, we can't do that, and it's not our decision. I'm like, exactly. So you're sitting here peddling bullshit, and you're dealing with political issues that you got nothing to deal with, and you're trying to deal with it. So, look, you got a job to do. I got a job to do. You know all my networks. You can look them up. You can see who I am. I got nothing to hide, pal. So that was pretty much it. And he's like, you plan on going back to Cuba? And I'm like, absolutely. I said, I told you I'm trying to get close to the government to see if I can observe their elections within 2 years. And plus there's, solidarity and help for the Cuban people. That's also there for the benefit of the Cuban people. I'm not going there for tourism because that's what they tried to start off the conversation with. Like, you can't go there as a tourist. I'm like, can I go there as a journalist? Oh, you're a journalist? I'm like, guys, come on. But at the end, fam, I'm going to tell you the funniest part is after we have our conversations, he goes, well, you're going to be the first to be able to go because I guess we got no business here, do we? I said, we got no business, my friend. I will be coming through this airport. He gave me his business card. He says, let me know when you're coming through so you ain't got to deal with any of this shit no more, and I'll make sure everything's cool. I said, thank you very much. And he goes, but do me a favor. He hands me back a passport. If you come back, don't take back any Cuban cigars already because then I got to cut them up and throw them out, and I got to do all this paperwork. And I was like, this guy's trying to throw me a bone. I was like, I wanted to say, take your tongue out of my ass. I rolled over there like, I'm saying, like, come on, man. You're just going to okay. Like, hey, man, I'm throwing you a bone. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, don't get all friendly with me and think I'm going to do the favor back to you, pal. But it was just, it was very interesting to have that. I know you got to, like, when you do that, it's like a whole different experience. It's like shit you don't do in your life. You're like, whoa, I was just detained by Border Patrol, and I think the plainclothes officer was probably DHS or what's going on. But this is like, very, very interesting, fam?
Yeah, and they have been like, harping down on people as well. And in Finland as well, I was questioned, oh, how's your what is it? How is your journalism going, your career going over there? I mean, haha, like, because Russia doesn't have real journalism, right? The United States is the beacon of journalism, even though Julian Assange is fucking prison, right? Like this, I mean, it's just ridiculous. And then I was also, this one you don't know, I was also pulled aside in Sweden briefly, supposedly for my seat. Like they just randomly pulled me, but they pulled me when I don't look like these people in the Netherlands. So I was sticking out like a sore thumb. And so then they pulled me in. They're like, "Oh, United States, okay." And so they find the Russian visa. What are you doing in Russia? So your final destination is Moscow. Like, yeah, I'm just gonna go to Moscow. I have a visa. Blah blah blah. The same thing. I have to go through the same thing. Questioning, looking at me like I'm some sort of like spy, an agent, right? And the thing is, the Russian government, did keep my passport for a little bit. Coming back, they didn't detain me. They just simply kept my passport for a little bit, because I'm an American in Russia, and so it's like almost like everybody is suspect of me in particular because I'm an American working in Russia, and I'm a journalist, and journalist is the way a lot of the you have that Evan guy. The CIA does get their little, their minions in there. But the reality is, it takes 2 seconds to look at anything I've ever written to know what my opinions are, what they have been before coming to Russia. They have been consistently the same for years. And
Yeah.
so, again, when that's why it bothers me when people are like, "Oh, she's just working in Russia, and she's just very Putin." It's like, no, I've had these same opinions. I can pull you up countless things I've said during the Russiagate scandal that are the same things I would say right now. It's the same exact thing. I have not changed. In fact, the only reason I've probably become more anti-West is because of traveling to these countries that are sanctioned or have suffered because of US intervention. And all I would want is for the United States to be what it says it is, a country that supports liberty, justice for all, and freedom for all, including people outside of our borders, including countries where we've interfered in. That this is why we have this immigration problem, as Pasa always points out. And so that's what I would want. It's not like I want, the people of the US to suffer. It's not like that I want like people to get hurt in any way, shape, or form. But what I do want is for the American people to have a say in their government, because right now the American people don't have a say in their government. And the government is committing atrocities without their approval, essentially. And
Yeah.
you're paying the price in some ways for these
Yeah.
atrocities. And it's just really, it's really obvious when you go to these countries in Honduras, Nicaragua, Peru. All of these countries have had US intervention, Colombia, and Brazil. Like, you see all of these things, and Russia as well. People that have suffered so much and gave up so much during the Second World War, only to be vilified the way they are being vilified. I can't travel with a Russian anywhere because they're not allowed. They have to have a special visa. And the way they're like, questioned by the Finnish, by anybody in the EU, is just ghastly. It's not fair. It's really, really Nazi-like the
Yeah.
way we're treating them. It's xenophobic. And so, I want us to be what we preach, and that's not where we are right now in the United States. So if that's the truth, and we've seen it all outlined on WikiLeaks and all over, actual journalism. And so what is that a crime? I guess it could be a crime, right? I've been, this is the most I've ever been detained in my entire life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's kind of, it could be scary. It could potentially send people to say, well, maybe you should go home. Maybe you should go back to the United States. But do I feel safe as a journalist in the United States, in the UK, in the EU? No, I feel like I'm constantly looked at and questioned for my opinion, and we shouldn't feel that way.
Yep. And people ask me, you guys like, oh, you guys are anti-imperialist. Like, the majority of your work since the get-go has been about the CIA and the intelligence apparatus going to these other countries and causing chaos at the behest of the ruling class. So therefore, these people have to migrate to our country because they have turned those countries into shithole countries by our foreign policy, investing in all these anti-government groups of that country. The most craziest groups, whether it be the Mujahideen or the the Contras, what I'm saying? All these groups that are crazy. And they're like, how could you be so calm in that room with a plainclothes officer in the Customs Border Patrol? It's because that, you know what I'm saying, you know, and we have it like an abolish the CIA t-shirt, because it's like we understand the environment we're working in, and that's the environment we have to work in. And I told him I have every intentions of going back to Cuba. I've been to all these other countries. I want to go, you know what I'm saying? I want to come to, he's like, do you want to come through this airport again? I said, I'd like to, listen, but I don't want to get, you know, held up all the time. And that's when he gave me his card. And it was like, then we had a moment because there was another movie, fam. And I couldn't remember the name of the movie, and we were all talking about it. I'm like, is this card, which is like that get out of free jail pass? I'm like, what's that movie with Danny DeVito and Jack Nicholson? And I go to the guys, the movie where they buried him in the middle of, it's a real life story. They buried him in the middle of Giant Stadium. What's that guy's name? You know, he goes, I'm Italian from New Jersey, and I don't even know this. And I was like, hey, you should know this. I remember it was Hoffa, but on the back of a business card, Jimmy Hoffa wrote, give this guy whatever he wants. And he gave it to Danny DeVito's character, who was Jimmy Hoffa's right-hand man. So whenever he got stopped by the cops or somebody else, he would just show him the card and they let him go. So I'm like, I got one of those get out of jail free cards and stuff. And, you know, it was like, hey, man, it was just kind of like respect for your adversary. That's it. You know what I'm saying? Because then, you know, because a lot of those people from the Answer Coalition, they went into the interrogation room. They came right back into the other room. They were given other pamphlets. They, you know what I'm saying? I guess they were just, and I'm not going to talk about a few things that where I said inside that interrogation room, because I just don't want to. And people were like, why didn't you put it up and post it up right away? I'm like, because I ain't trying to shitstorm. They know who I am. I know who they are. You let me do my job. I'll let you do your job. I'll answer the question.
First of all, it'd be really dumb to do that while you're still in the country. That's why I didn't do it either. It's just for security purposes. You're not going to do that. You know, especially if they're taking down your information, people's numbers, blah blah blah. Like, I mean, the interrogation was pretty you know, extensive. I mean, you know, like, and calm, because what am I gonna? I have nothing to hide. Everything I have said, I've said, and it's out like in public, and I'm pretty, you know, I share my opinions on them. Pretty opinionated, guys. In case you haven't noticed over here, and you know, even when I do my journalism, if anything, RT is a lot less difficult on the U.S. than I am. You know, I am a much more, I have my stances much more strongly than pretty much anybody, except maybe one of my other colleagues that has the same political ideology as I do. But the vast majority of people I work with are completely just, you know, they try to just say things as unbiasedly as possible. As do I, but I mean, I personally have, you know, more investment in how I feel things are than a lot of the people that I work with. So it's not that I'm being influenced, it's at all by where I work. Like, I have these opinions already, and just being here and seeing the reality of things really reinforces that belief that I already had, rather than people telling me things. Nobody is telling me things. Like I said, I'm a lot more harsh on my country because I expect better, especially with what it says it is, and it says it exports all over the world, because we do have really horrible psychopaths in power, and not just in the United States, but in the EU and in the UK. And there's evil people everywhere. There's evil people in every country in the world. But I'm not going to go around focusing on every country in the world when I'm a U.S. citizen.
Exactly.
So
it's our country, our house. We need to clean it. So that was our experience, fam. I think it's awesome. A few things I can't tell you on the camera, I'll tell you after, because I don't want to, you know. In fact, you know, when I go through there, I'm going to contact the customs agent, like, hey, man, I'm coming through. I'm going to Cuba again. I'm going to let you know right now. I ain't going to, you know what I'm saying, because I know he's got me. As soon as that ticket's bought, that shit's pinging. Ping. So I ain't going to try to be sneaky and go around him. This is the, you know, these, you know, you got to dance with the devil in the pale moonlight, and that's what I'll be doing. I'll be dancing with that devil because, you know, but he understands my work. He understands what I'm trying to do, because that's the thing. I think when it comes to Latin America, even if we go there and go, oh, look at this, look at these elections. They're fair. They're transparent. I don't think the majority of those people care, because they're like, we don't care. We own the propaganda apparatus. We'll still say it's unfair and we'll get our way. Your little peeny word's not going to mean anything. So go do your work. I don't think that, you know what I'm saying? I think it's different than opposing elections at home when you show that the elections over here are fair. You know what I'm saying? Because they can still get their narrative out and they have that vessel. So I really don't think that deters them. I think they're looking for other things. But, you know, I mean, like the Answer Coalition people was obviously they had that fuck you police kind of attitude. I ain't telling you shit. And it's like, look, I don't want like I ain't gonna say shit. I'll tell you later, man. I'll tell you later.
You gotta be you know, it depends. Are you a journalist or are you an activist? If you're an activist, by all means, you know, you know, F the police, you know, like sing your song, do whatever. But if you're a journalist, you know, even if you do feel that, you have to be more diplomatic. This is what people need to understand. There's a level of diplomacy that you have to have, and you have to be able to interact with people. Believe me, you know, a lot of us can get far. And by the way, you know, a lot of these people were the ones that called Pasta and I anti-vaxxers, or they called Max Blumenthal and Anya anti-vaxxers or whatever, kicked them out of the New York City People's Forum. You know, a lot of these people, the organizers, I don't know who specifically was there, but the same organizers were the ones that are, you know, extremely social justice, you know, those type of leftists that we just don't get along with. I still think it's wrong that they were detained. And, I think it's wrong that they're not committing a crime.
Why were they detained though? That's the question. Like I said, I'm not going to tell you everything I said in the room stuff. Why the fuck were they detained anyways? I mean, it's like, come on, dude. Like, okay.
And it's like supporting the blockade. It helps everybody. It helps these officers because they have less issues to deal with. It helps the Cuban people get back on their feet, and it helps us people who want to go to Cuba and you know, and do these things, and activists who want to support Cuba. So really, I mean, it's a no-brainer. The blockade is pretty much a mainstream thing now. This is why you see a lot of these people supporting
Christian Smalls
it.
was there, and I saw him at the airport. Was there. Saw him, said hi to him at the airport. How you doing, Christian? I don't know if you remember me. You were on my show, Pasta. My partner's Fiorella. We were the Convo Couch. Oh yeah, I was on your show back in the days. I said, yeah, when you were small, Mr. Smalls. And you know, we just shook hands. How you doing? I met Manolo. I introduced myself. I said, hey, Manolo, I'm Pasta. I was one of the speakers at the Rage Against the War Machine rally. You know,
no, you did not say that.
Yes, I did. I certainly did, because I wanted him to know that I was somebody he might have thought differently about, but to show him that I'm just a nice guy. And if he ever wants to have a conversation, it's open there for him as well. You know, he does some good work out there himself when it comes to Cuba. I mean, and at the end of the day, what's that?
Props to you for doing that.
Well, if Manolo wants to come on the show tomorrow and talk tomorrow, I'll talk to Manolo. You know what I'm saying?
It's wrong that
Modi came on our show.
Got detained.
What's that?
I said it's wrong that he and others got detained.
I don't know if he got detained because he wasn't on our flight. So I don't know Christian Smalls, those guys, they were going Jersey and stuff. But there was at least 6 Answer Coalition or People's Forum or whatever those people are, whatever group they're from, that whole coalition that were on my plane that got detained. I was the first of them to go, because once again, I went in the room. This is it, boys and girls. There's no girls, but this is it, boys. This is what I do. You got a job to do. So do I. End the story. Azalut, you got everything on me. That's it. You know, and then when, you know, there were, like I said, there's certain questions they asked that I can't talk about now. Certain statements I said I can't talk about now, but that's what it was all about. We were really really cordial with each other, really nice. And I shook their hands and I left. That was it. You know, that was it. Yeah. And I'm glad that they called me at that time, because I'm like, if they don't call me this next time they come in here, I'm going to start barking at them. Like, and I had some nasty things to say. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was like, all right, here we go. Like, I'm going to fucking point out why you took this job. Why, you know what I'm saying? Like you fucking just couldn't go to a therapist and take care of your mommy and daddy issues. You had to fucking go get a badge and self. Like, I was going to say that. I'm like, you look like you get off on this shit, but I bet you need like about 3,000 milligrams of fucking Viagra to get your shit off. Like, I was ready. Oh, I'm like, oh, you look like the dude that we had to hang out with because our moms were friends with your mom and you couldn't get no friends, so they forced us to hang out. And I bet you killed stray cats on the side. And those tattoos ain't doing nothing. And you, Missy, you're the one who's pissed off because you blew the prom king and they made fun of you about it after, and you never got over it. So now you got a fucking badge to compensate. Like, I was ready to go off. I swear, I shit you not. And then he's like, Craig Jardula? I'm like, okay. Deep breath. All right, gentlemen, what is this about? And then we went into our dance, and that was that, you know. And, you know, look, I believe that out of the 3 people in the room, 2 of the people believe in the marketing themselves, that they're doing good for their country and they're just working as a job, whatnot. I don't think that they realize at detail who they're actually working for. You know what I'm saying? Like they honestly believe in institutions and the country and shit. One of the dudes now, I know he knows. He's the sharp one. He knows, but he doesn't care. He's made that life choice. He's probably said, this is what it is. This is what the life's about. This is what the world is, and I'm going to be on the winning team. You know what I'm saying? The other ones, I still believe, and they're nice guys, that they believe in institutions, and they believe that what they're doing is necessary. You know what I'm saying? So, hey.
And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter which one it is, because they all end up working on the same team, which is why it's important people realize on the other end of the spectrum why, you're getting completely divided over the wrong things here, because the opposing side has people working for them that might have good intentions, but they end up, working for the wrong side. And there shouldn't be. We should all be on the same side as their country. But we're not in the case of the United States, because a lot of people are abusing their power against us and against other people. And that has to be called out. And again, that's always the job of journalists, is to be the watchdog of corruption in government. But I guess, that doesn't apply in the United States. So again, this is why other governments in like Cuba and Nicaragua and other places, including Russia and China, are careful about the Western media, because this so-called independent media is funded by the United States. So it's just kind of like, what is independent media anymore? And like in the US, we're pretty much pushed out. We're pretty much we don't have a choice, and that's difficult. So anyway, guys, we've been talking a long time about this. Let's show you some pictures of what we saw. So I said Cuba is a beautiful country with people who've been paying a price for decades for simply defending their sovereignty from Western hegemony. So
can I read
Cuba,
that first line, Pam?
Yes.
Linda por fin nos vemos.
Thank you for practicing your Spanish, fam. So as you can see, Cuba has a lot of older cars. There's a lot of Ladas, Russian cars. These are Russian cars. There's me in front of the statue of Jose Marti. And there's one of the streets
in Cuba.
Hood,
guys, right, fam? That's my hood right over there.
Pasta.
That's my hood right over there.
So a couple things about Cuba. We wanted to go to the May festivities, right? The May 1st, the day of Cuban May Day festivities, but we couldn't do it because they were all canceled. They were all canceled. Bad weather and also shortage of gas. I don't know if you have. We'll show. I'll post the video up later. It's a video of long lines. Okay, of people waiting, like kilometers and kilometers of people in lines waiting to get gas because there's a shortage. There's a fuel crisis in Cuba. And the gas is so expensive that your cab rides are expensive. Cab rides are very expensive. Everything else is much cheaper than in the United States. But cab rides are expensive, especially if you're traveling with pasta, because if you look like pasta, you're going to get charged a lot more. And that's just the reality. Okay. And I was, this is why pasta's got to learn Spanish, but he couldn't do it. So it's fine. So it's really bad in terms of the fuel. The fuel crisis. It's really bad. And you can't use any sort of bank there. You have to pretty much get your cash out, and they take dollars, but you're better off switching the dollars to the peso. So you have to go do that, but you can't go to an ATM and get more cash out. It doesn't work. Again, blockade, sanctions. That's a huge part of it. I was told Wyatt Reed was able to use one of his Russian cards, but when I tried it, it didn't work. And I have a more legitimate Russian card than Wyatt Reed. So I'm a little upset about that. But so that was really unfortunate that we weren't able to do that. There was an event that those People's Forum people were at, but we weren't with that delegation. We were with our own, by ourselves. And
I did that. We did make contact with one of our friend named Ivan, and he had put together another march because they were doing like individual marches for the people who were there, delegations. And that was canceled, but we got up at 4:30 in the morning, got on a cab at 5, got there at 5:30 in the morning, and nobody came except for one guy, and his name was Michael. He's an awesome dude, a German, and he was there in solidarity for the Cuban people and the workers, whatnot. So we made lemonade out of lemons, but we met an awesome person. We had a great conversation, had some coffee in the morning, and then went on to go hit the streets and do what we had to do as far as handing out baseballs and bats and those other things. I put that in my little video. I know you were looking down as I was playing that little video, but I had some clips of some of the baseball players and stuff. I personally hit baseball gold, ladies and gentlemen. One of the first of all, last time I came there, I was there with Wyatt, and we went to the International Press Division, where you can try to get permission to do interviews and do film press. And they were kind of like, well, we just know you got to go to the embassy back home, we'll create a dialogue, yada yada yada. Cuba takes a little bit more time to get involved, especially if you're a white dude from the United States. I'm assuming they're gonna say, let's build a relationship before we do business, right? It's not the type of girl to put out in your first date. You gotta build some trust over there. So with that being said, I asked them last time, could we go to up to the baseball fields during school and hand out bats and balls? And they said, absolutely not. Don't do that kind of thing. But if you go to the little municipal parks and stuff, feel more free. So I would give out bats and balls and gloves and mitts in the streets of Cuba and Havana. And I did that. And that was great. But I reserved, this time I had 3 times as much gear, and I reserved 1/3 of it. I left behind because the person who was at our boutique hotel, it was like a big house converted into a hotel. He was his stepfather, he had told me, was one of the coaches of the municipal teams. And he took me on Tuesday to go to the baseball field and witness a practice, meet the family, meet the friends, talk to the kids, give them some balls. We took a big picture together. It was just fucking awesome. So the fact that I made that connection now, when I go back, I know exactly where to go, fam, with my gear that will be used, which will be greatly appreciated, because since the situation happened with COVID and supply chains have shut down, and including their blockade and the fact they've been demonized and put on the terrorism
Designated
list.
terror.
Yeah, I mean, come on, state sponsor of terrorism. That's just ridiculous. It's been even more harder. And listen, there are situations in the streets. I see little kids, and I'm in my hotel, and hey, what's going on? The second to last day I was there, they were playing baseball right in the street across them, and I can see they were hitting this shaggy ball, and the cover was almost falling off, and I was like, oh yay! And I threw out the baseball, and they're like, oh, it's awesome to do those things. I made a great connection, and I can't wait to go back. And I let everybody know I'm going back.
Yeah, and again, this is just the first of many trips to come to Cuba. And when I'm in Florida, I definitely want to go back as well, because it's so close. It'd be a waste to not go back.
Yeah.
And I plan on going back to Florida in June. So I'll let you guys know when that is. And I really love Cuba. The weather is beautiful. And the people are so nice. And I just, they're everything that Pasta said. There's a lot of people who it's very hard for them to stay there because of everything that's happening. And I do see a danger of that, and I want to go back with some of our anti-imperialist friends, because some of them know Cuba, have been there multiple times. And, I think we could do a lot of great work there. So I do want to go back. I did take a lot of B-roll footage, and I want to put a little video together as well. Yeah. But, the blockade has done so much damage to the people. It's very hard to imagine how people live sometimes. And it's not entirely there's no life. There's restaurants, there's places of business. People need to understand that there's places of business, there's restaurants. I'm going to post some of those pictures because I think people have the wrong idea as well. No homeless people, by the way.
Zero.
And something I want to highlight, Pasta and I went to a restaurant, and there was a guy, an older man, who seemed that he was out of it, right? And instead of being beat up by, a stranger or choked and killed, just like a man was choked and killed on the subway recently, right? The gentleman who was security at the restaurant went and spoke to him, try to calm him down. It was a completely different process to the way we see in the United States. So for all the people that say, well, no, he was posing a threat, blah, blah, this guy was yelling and screaming in front of a restaurant. You could have argued he posed a danger. He didn't end up dead. He didn't end up in a chokehold. He ended up being talked to and just pushed away. And he was likely not even homeless. He was just a guy that was older, really old, and like not mentally okay. And that's the reality. That's how it is. It's a completely different way of thinking, and people need to understand that. Whether or not you like communism, and by the way, Cuba's not communist; it's a socialist country, and whether or not you like that, it doesn't matter. People have the ability to countries have the right to have their national sovereignty. People have the right to live the way they want to live. And a lot of these people don't want to leave Cuba. They don't want to leave their homes. Some people feel like they're being forced to. And so, it's not for us to decide what they should or shouldn't do. It's simply for us to help support, get their country out of that. And it really pains me to see a lot of the people in South Florida who almost seem to want to bring the country down instead of helping the people that live there. That are, a lot of these people are their families or ancestors of sorts, and it's just really weird to see that dynamic.
Well, they cry when they get drunk after. They sit there and badmouth the government and the country so bad when they get drunk. I want to go back, and then cry. And I've witnessed that before. And when we do get to the Jordan Neely support, we'll talk about that, because it is a lot about the conditions in which the United States are in versus the conditions in which Cuba are in. Like they have these poor conditions, but what is there? Maybe one stabbing a year in the whole country on average and stuff. I mean, it's a different culture. It's a different mindset. They also aren't polluted with a bunch of pharmaceuticals the way we are. They don't also have the same culture that we're part of, as far as like everything that we're taught and whatnot. And fights are highlighted in every single aspect of our social media. I mean, there's websites where people can go to just to witness fights, and they're like, "Ooh," you know what I'm saying? And don't get me wrong, Cuba has a lot of MMA is growing in that country and everything, but it's the conditions, I believe, more than anything, in which this Jordan Neely situation we have to play in the factor of what's going on. You know what I'm saying? I know some people want to sit there and say it's going to be about white supremacy and everything. We'll get to that. We'll talk about it. We'll throw our opinions in. But first, you have this video here. Or should we go to your Cuba pictures first? Because you have more pictures.
Yeah, they're the Cuba pictures, and then we'll go back. That video was supposed to be for before, but we'll go back to that video. I just want to point out. Yeah. So there's some more pictures, guys. That's Fidel.
Is that who that is?
Yeah. That's what I saw on the other side. Then there's that's in front of the Malecon, and that's just around the center of Cuba. And if you keep going, just more monuments. Yes, speaking in Russian. That one, yeah, Marti, and then that's again in front of the Malecon. And the streets of Cuba near the center.
Downtown
we
Havana.
Also got Havana.
That's my hood, fam.
Havana.
That's Havana. That's Havana. That's my hood, fam. My hood.
Pasta's gonna move there first. I'm telling you.
It's my hood. If the Cuban government would let me, fuck yeah. If I can find a way to get good internet and do this, fuck yeah. You know what I'm saying? I do it in a heartbeat. The people are truly amazing. I love it there. Yeah. I mean, I got nothing else to say. It's an amazing place. So definitely.
So Frank Abel said the picture is Camilo Cienfuegos. Okay. And it must have been the other picture that was Fidel. I had a picture of Fidel up there, but you're right. So just Camilo Cienfuegos. And I wanted to go, funny story. I wanted to go see the Che Guevara monument in Santa Clara, and I thought it was a lot closer. And the guy looked at me like I was insane, because it was like 200 kilometers away from. He was looking at me like it's a very long ride.
He went like this. He went like this. He went.
For me, that's nothing. Like what? Like I could do that in an hour and a half, like whatever. But he was acting like that, And
if you have the money and you are in Cuba, and you can spend extra money.
Yeah.
You take the old-fashioned cars. The people with the old-fashioned cars do so because they're amazing and fun to drive in.
Yeah.
But they're gas guzzlers. You get a guy who's got like a small Volkswagen Jetta or a small Japanese car. The prices of the thing are much cheaper, and that's the ones I'm like, give us your business card, pal. You know what I'm saying? Like, here's your business card. You know, so that's. And I also put this up, fam. This is once again. These are some of Havana's finest baseball players. I was able to meet them and donate some baseball equipment. This truly was awesome. And despite May Day being canceled, it was an amazing trip. I can't wait to return. One issue, though, fam. Too many of these ballers like the Yankees. The second most liked team was the Astros, but you can see it right there. I mean, look at that, dude. That's like,
I'm Team Yankee anyway over the Mets. I mean, who isn't? Who likes the Mets? Come on.
Fam, don't start. But that's the baseball team. That's my hand around the coach. The other coach was to the right. It's, you can see some, it's fairly hard. There's some of the baseballs I left in the bat, and it's just, man, it's just truly amazing. And I can't wait to get back. I can't wait to get back there and do what I can do to help out, do what I can do to help out, especially the baseball players. So, fam, we do have this clip. Do you still want to do it, the Julian Assange one, or I don't know, what's his name? What's his name? The president. Jesus, I can't even remember, fam. It's
all men and women created by you know the thing.
That guy.
So Joe Biden said, that guy said journalism is not a crime. We've talked about this, I believe, right? Like it's I mean, it's ridiculous. They keep talking about Evan Gerskovich, and they completely pretend Julian Assange doesn't exist. And again, like, if journalism isn't a crime, I wasn't pulled over for detained for going to Cuba. I was detained for literally working in Russia and being a journalist in Russia. Essentially, they can say all they want about the suitcase bullshit, but we know that's not why it was pulled aside. And so it's becoming really, really dangerous, I guess, to be a journalist, right? Like, and do you guys want to hear this? You want to hear this? Okay.
I do.
Okay.
To Evan's parents, Ella, Mikhail, and sister Danielle, as I've told you in person, we, not just me, we all stand with you. Evan went to report in Russia to shed light on the darkness that you all escaped from years ago. Absolute courage. We're working every day to secure his release, looking at opportunities and tools to bring him home. We keep the faith. We also keep the faith for Austin Tice. Journalism is not a crime. Evan and Austin should be released immediately, along with every other American held hostage or wrongfully detained abroad. To Evan's parents, Ella,
doesn't that
Mikhail, and sister Danielle, as I've told you in person, we, not just me, we all stand with you. Evan went to report in Russia. All men and women created by you know the thing that you all escaped.
Okay. I'm sorry. A couple things. First of all, doesn't it just like boil your blood to hear him say journalism is not a crime? Because it really boils my blood. Literally, how many times have Assange activists and Assange supporters and everybody that's a journalist been saying that in relation to Julian Assange? And literally, they take this phrase and apply it to one of their mainstream media journalists who was, according to Russia, working on the behalf of the US government. Now, again, that is what they say. That is what Russia says. Okay. Like, I can't confirm that 100%, but the guy, you look at his social media, you see what he's posting, right? He's posting nothing truthful about what's actually happening. And they're fighting so hard for this guy. Not a single mention of Julian Assange, not a single mention at all whatsoever. Yeah. And so,
because Julian Assange exposed them and exposed their grift,
right,
exposed their wars.
Right.
So this is not about journalism. It does boil my blood that he says. I mean, but that dude boils my blood every single time.
It's my physical and mental, my physical as well as my mental fitness.
Yeah, every time he opens his mouth, it's just, oh, fam.
And yeah, so I think that was that section, right?
That was that section, guys. Thank you so much. If you guys want to leave a Rumble Rants, Vicky Lynn is holding the doors open for y'all to do so. Go ahead and do that. You want to be a subscriber, please do. Join on up. Death to Tyrants is hanging out. Thank you, Death to Tyrants. Opossum King, he's there as well. Northside, California, 707. All hanging out in the Rumble, guys. Thank you so much. It's an awesome place to play. If you're a Rockfin Premium member, there's 31 of you guys. Gregory Walker, what's going on, brother? Raw Meathead. Meat Herd, excuse me, he's there. Rob Juno's there, fam. Hi, Rob. Ricky Rance and a bunch of other people are hanging on out. We do have some super rays. In fact, we have two of them. OTR Trucker says, I missed the part about your detention. Now, you put that up in just the beginning, and we can continue to talk, so I'm pretty sure you got caught up on it. But you can always go back and watch it. We'll have it posted up later. Gregory Walker, first off, Fee, go easy on Jackson. I remember I was a dipshit when I was 15, too. Thanks for the fire takes on Steve Fee. Glad I left the T Lab for it. Also, thank you both of you for doing what you do, including getting detained. Gregory Walker, thank you so much, brother. It's always a pleasure to call you my fam, to call you my friend. We couldn't do all this work without you guys. You guys mean the world to us, and thank you so much. You know, I kind of have a different opinion about that whole situation too as well. You know, people are young, they're stupid, they say stupid things, and yeah, whatever. I'm not even gonna get into it. No, not
Yeah,
not going
don't even
there.
get into it because
Not
if he
not
was a
getting into
different person, people wouldn't be saying that
Yep,
at all.
not getting into it. No,
So you
Pasta
already
is
did. You
not a
already said it.
Dodger
If
fan.
he was a different person, people wouldn't be saying that.
Fam, I
Okay.
just said we're not getting into that.
You did though. You said something, so I'm gonna say something back.
I'm not getting it.
Yeah,
Fam,
no,
they
that's
tried to hit
sorry.
the
That doesn't
Kremlin.
excuse a lot of things.
Fam,
At all.
fam,
So what? I'm allowed to have a fucking opinion and say what I want to say.
I'm not getting into it.
Okay, but if I want to say something, I'm allowed to say it.
Of course.
Okay. Okay, so then don't shut me down when I'm talking about something and I'm trying to say something.
I'm not trying to shut you down. I never would.
Okay. All right. Yeah, no. That's no excuse whatsoever. And 24 years old isn't 15. Yeah. I wanted to put something else here
About Cuba?
about the Kremlin attack. No, the next section. Yeah, because we need to hear about Blinken. Let's see here. Yeah, okay, so let's go ahead and play this video. So this is Russia reports that Ukraine tried to hit the Kremlin overnight with two unmanned aerial drones.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
All right. I thought you said
Two
play the video.
unmanned aerial drones in an assassination attempt on Putin. So that was what was reported. Russia's military and special services saw it use these radar systems to disable the devices, and then Ukraine subsequently denied the involvement. Now, this is, of course, on Tuesday. I will be at the May Day parade. Okay, Russia celebrates their May Day parade on Tuesday. It's May 9th parade, and the entire a lot of Russians go out in this Red Square and they're going to be celebrating. That's what you see on this video. So basically what happened was there were drones from Ukraine that went and attacked the Kremlin. Putin was not there. But the Russian foreign ministry considers it a terrorist attack and an attempt on Putin's life. I just want to pose a question to you guys. Imagine if Mexico or some other, neighboring country went and droned the United States on the behalf of China or Russia. Just imagine the outrage, right? It droned the White House. That's literally the equivalent of what happened, right? Or worse. Like it's just, but just imagine. And now everybody's pretending like this didn't happen, and they're all washing their hands off of it. So just show the video. We can just show the video.
Ooh.
All right. So, as you guys can see, down there are the preparations for the decorations for Tuesday. Okay. Now, I gotta point out a couple things. You can keep that on. I'm gonna read this article. If you want, I'll read it with you, just to cut a little bit of more information. So, people were wondering, like, okay, so what's Russia going to do? Russia said that they're going to respond, or they will respond to with whatever they deem necessary. And they're there's several videos that we show here, right? There's several videos, and the attacks had occurred within 15 minutes of each other. So there was two drones. The first struck the Senate Palace at around 2:27 Moscow time, while the second one fell at 2:43 a.m. Moscow time. And the Russian presidential office said this was a planned terrorist attack targeting Putin's residence. And Dmitry Peskov clarified that the president was elsewhere at the time, so his schedule is unaffected. So Moscow has banned the use of unauthorized drones in Moscow, explaining that this could, be a potential security risk for law enforcement, and that they deserve the right to retaliate at, quote, anywhere and anytime it deems necessary. So Kiev immediately denied the response and said that they don't have any information about the so-called night attacks on the Kremlin. This is what Zelensky said while he was hiding out in Finland. By the way, Zelensky left Finland. He was in Finland when I was in Finland. Then he left and went to the Netherlands. I was trying to find him, but I apologize.
Find Zelensky?
I wasn't able to find Zelensky because he went to the Coke area, and I don't know where those areas are exactly. I don't frequent, so he went over there. And fam, I already read that, so we're good. But I do want to show this part too, because our friend
Alex
Rubinstein had put out an article in the Gray Zone about how a Ukrainian banker offered cash for drone terror in Russia. Okay, and he put this out on the 3rd. And this oligarch, Volodymyr Yatsenko, offered $500,000 of bounty to any weapons maker able to land a drone in Red Square during Moscow's upcoming Victory Day parade. Okay, so again, I mentioned the Victory Day parade because it's extremely important, because there's so many people that are out in Russia. And that this is, of course, not a coincidence that this is happening right on the eve of that, right? And I'll just read the first two paragraphs. On April 23rd, a Ukrainian drone laden with 30 Canadian-made C4 explosive blocks crashed near Rudnevo Industrial Park in Moscow. Ukraine-based operators deployed the 37-pound arsenal in a failed bid to assassinate Russian President Vladimir Putin, who was scheduled to visit Rudnevo that day. The drone ultimately failed to hit its target, crashing roughly 12 miles from its intended destination. Russian media reported authorities discovered 3 similar unmanned aircrafts in the surrounding area. By the time the Canadian manufactured bombs arrived in Moscow, the government in Ottawa had provided Kiev with nearly $6 billion worth of aid in support of Ukraine's fight against Russia's military. So he goes on to talk about where the drones came from in Kharkov, and how much these people were offered to do this. And this is, of course, all before what happened in Kremlin, right? So we know that there is an attempt at Putin's life. We know that one of the main things leadership in Congress in the United States has said is that they want to eliminate Vladimir Putin. Who was it that said that? Was it Lindsey Graham? Was it
Lindsey Graham? Lindsey Graham.
Yeah, he specifically said that they want Putin gone. Literally. I mean,
regime change is the goal in Moscow, fam.
Regime change. And so they literally tell you what they want. But, so that happened. And then Pasta thought, people were going to be up in arms. And I do think people are in some ways like, what the hell? How is this happening? But again, they know that Russia is extremely well prepared. They know that Putin has so much security around. But it is like, wow, the audacity. I feel like that's more of the sentiment. The audacity of Ukraine to do this and then say, no, it wasn't us. Like, it's just like, it's ridiculous. So this isn't new. That they did this. So them saying we didn't do this, there's evidence that they've done this before. So again, them saying we didn't do this is just.
I think the big question is, fam, is the United States responsible? If every single piece of weapons there comes from the West and comes from NATO, pushing these proxy wars and taking away their national sovereignty in 2014, at the end of the day, isn't the United States ultimately responsible? That is the question I hear a lot of people asking. Do you have an answer to that one?
They are. Yeah, absolutely. They're absolutely responsible, just like they're responsible for what Israel's doing, just like they've been responsible for what any of their created assets have been doing. But Anthony Blinken disagrees. He said that this is up to Ukraine. So I put in that video. Okay, so this is Anthony Blinken. And when he was asked about the reports on the drone attacks, he says he couldn't validate them. They simply don't know. And he said everybody should take what the Kremlin says with a shaker of salt, not a grain of salt, a shaker of salt. Look at him being so smart. And he also pretty much washed his hands off the United States, off of what Ukraine was doing. Let's listen to what he said.
Seen the reports. I can't in any way validate them. We simply don't know. Second, I would take anything coming out of the Kremlin with a very large shaker of salt. So let's see. We'll see what the facts are. And it's really hard to comment or speculate on this without really knowing what the facts are.
If Ukraine decided on its own to strike back in Russian territory, the United States would not criticize them.
Again, these are decisions for Ukraine to make. Seen the reports.
So whenever it's something they don't want to admit, we don't have all the facts yet.
We can't confirm or deny, fam. It's up to Ukraine, not us.
In other words, yes. And so then, and would the U.S. criticize Ukraine? Of course not. So in an effort to say, of course not, well, that's up to Ukraine. Yeah. So who's funding Ukraine? Smarty pants. Who's funding Ukraine? Like, yeah, okay.
No shit. Who's controlling Ukraine? Yeah.
Oh God. But in the same interview, something good happened, and I will give credit where credit's due. Although I don't agree with Medea on a lot of things. I think this is important. What was done here. So in the same interview, this was for World Press Freedom Day. They had this interview, right? And Anthony Blinken and this guy, David Ignatius from the Washington Post. Let's look at what Medea and another activist from Code Pink did.
In particular, I'm curious whether you've been able to talk.
Excuse us, we can't use this day without calling for the freedom of Julian Assange. The Biden... The extradition request for Julian Assange.
2 hours and not one word.
Take it easy, take it easy, take it easy, guys.
Not one word about journalist Shireen Abu Akleh, who was murdered.
So
by the Israeli occupation forces intelligence.
we're here to celebrate freedom of expression, and we just experienced it. Let me continue, Mr. Secretary, to ask you about Evan Gershkovich and your efforts to get him free. Well, first, in particular.
Okay, so first of all, Hack, you're here to celebrate freedom of expression, and you've just expressed. No, you haven't. They were literally Medea Benjamin. I'm sure Medea Benjamin is like tiny. The woman is tiny. Like she's like here. The guy was using so much force on her. Like they didn't express. Their mics were cut off. They were silenced. What exactly were they able to express here? Number one. Number two, they're having a day, a World Journalism Day, or whatever the hell they want to call it, World Press Freedom Day. We don't have a free press in the United States. Not really. We have the semblance of a free press. you can sit on a chair and have a conversation with Anthony Blinken, but journalists that aren't going to ask pre-planned questions and actually question Anthony Blinken with the hard questions don't get a chance to have a nice little chat with Anthony Blinken, and we all know that. So no, you don't have world press freedom. And of course, Julian Assange, they want to talk so much about Evan Gershowitz, or however you say his name. I apologize, but they literally never ever talk about Julian Assange. And again, I'm so glad so many people are speaking up and talking about him. Whatever I disagreements with them I have, however I feel about them, I'm so glad that people are making noise about it, because this is the epitome of hypocrisy, that this guy's name gets plastered everywhere on mainstream media, and so much silence for like literally years and years since Julian was imprisoned. 4 years in Belmarsh, but he was detained before that. So
I had
yeah.
the USA Today cover when they had to be all wearing the same T-shirt for the dude, and was like, "Oh my god, yeah, it is the epitome of hypocrisy." Fam, what is going on in Bakhmut? And you have to get your Bakhmut going.
So Bakhmut, or as it was called in Russia, Artyomsk, is a little interesting here. And they've only touched the surface of this. There's a lot of speculation as to what's going on here. So the Wagner boss, the Wagner are the military that is fighting. They're independent sort of Russia, but they're also fighting for Russia. So the Wagner boss announced that they're withdrawing from Bakhmut, and Yevgeny Prigozhin says his troops need time to recover and has asked the Russian army to take over their positions. So what they're doing is they're transitioning. They're having the Russian military come in and take over, and they're going to go take a breather. So this is what happened. And this is the key city, Donbas city of Artyomsk, also known for Ukrainians as Bakhmut, by May 10th. Okay. And he asked the Russian army to take over while they recover. And so he published a video on Telegram, and it was accompanied by an open letter addressed to the Defense Ministry of Russia, the president, and the people. And he complained that his forces were not receiving enough artillery munitions and were unable to hold the city, which is a regional logistics hub and was the site of months of urban warfare. However, they have the upper hand, but it's cost them a lot of munitions. He also mentioned men. And he said that the forces were supposed to have completely captured Artyomsk by May 9th, but claimed that since May 1st, paramilitary bureaucrats had cut off his troops from nearly all munitions. The offensive resources of the PMC, Wagner, ran out at the beginning of April, but are advancing despite the fact that the enemy forces outnumber us 5 times, Prigozhin said, adding that due to lack of ammunition, Wagner's losses are growing exponentially every day. Despite all this, the Council of Wagner PMC commanders has decided to hold their positions and continue the offensive on Bakhmut until May 10th in order to celebrate the sacred holiday for Russians, May 9th, Victory Day, and the brilliance of Russian weapons, the statement reads. Prigozhin declared that on May 10th, his fighters will hand over their positions in Artyomsk to the Russian army and withdraw the remnants of the Wagner PMC to rear camps to lick their wounds. Okay. The PMC chief concluded by saying, "We will lick our wounds, and when the motherland will be in danger, we will once again stand for its defense. The Russian people can count on us." Vladimir Putin's press secretary, Dmitry Peskov, said the Kremlin is aware of Prigozhin's statement, but declined to comment on the matter as it has to do with Russia's military operation in Ukraine. So, this is something that a lot of people had 2 reactions, right? On one end, they were like, "Oh my God, what is this? Like, this is bullshit. This is so division, blah, blah, blah. There's internal division. This shows weakness, blah, blah, blah." Of course, the Western media went to town with this, right? As expected. Oh my gosh, Russia's weak, blah, blah, blah. And I have some of the stuff, right, that we can show, like what they said. But it's in the folder. So the headlines say something like,
I see it. My bad.
"Massive split in Russian military forces as Wagner vows to quit Bakhmut on May 10th. So they, take it out of context. They plan to quit. They're just going to quit. Russian mercenary chief says fighters to leave Ukraine's Bakhmut to lick their wounds. So the mainstream media is like going ham on this. They're like super excited. But there are some theories, okay? One theory is this is bad This is like, there's corruption. Russian military should be giving them more munitions. Russia hasn't really used that much of its military, as Mark Sloboda has said multiple times here. They've only used a fraction of it. Wagner is not of the Russian government, so they have their own sort of funding, right? Like they don't necessarily their leader Yevgeny Prigozhin is the one that calls the shots. Now that's one entity, one theory. The other one is that this is a sort of like theatrics, and I have the video that we can watch. This is sort of theatrics, that this is to make Russia look like they're weaker than they are in this part of the region, because this sort of just the spring offensive that Ukraine had been talking about never came. But in terms of Russia, there is an expected offensive that's coming for Ukraine. And recently there were several hits, right, on Ukraine. The last few days there were hits and missiles sent. And so what they're saying is that this is a sort of theatrical thing to catch them off guard. What is going on? People don't really know. Everybody's speculating, hey, this is going on, this isn't going on, blah blah blah. But the reality is people don't really know. And I do have the video. We can
Is it
watch
the video right
on.
there? The second one right there with the
Second
general?
one is a video.
All right,
Yeah.
cool. I got that right now. Let me pull it up.
Но та разница в убитых и раненых, а их десятки тысяч человек, они лежат на совести тех, кто нам не выдавал боеприпасы. А это министр обороны Шойгу и это начальник генштаба Герасимов. Все заявки писались, все требования предъявлялись. Нам их не давали. Поэтому за десятки тысяч убитых и раненых перед их матерьми и детьми они...
So that's one of several rants he did, because he did several. But the our RT correspondent has been on the ground with Wagner for a while, and just recently they were talking about what was going on and how close they were to encircling. So this is kind of rather strange, and a lot of people are trying to make sense of what is going on here. Is this like some sort of internal feud? You know, he names Shoigu as the guy that's really, doing a lot of damage and stuff. But it's hard to say really what this is. But I do think, personally, that what we're going to see is an actual spring offensive. And I do think this is just more of a distraction. I don't really see, I do see like that there's some internal division, but I don't think it is going to affect the outcome of this conflict in any way, shape, or form, as some are going to claim. And I do think that this is just also like any sort of entity, there's going to be squabbles. Is this some sort of, attempt to catch Ukraine? I don't know. Based on how he sounded, I wouldn't go that far, but it could be.
Is that good, fam?
Yes, fam.
Okay.
On that, yeah.
I think we're good because that's like we're close to 2 hours already. A long show. And yeah. What do you think?
You want to save the Jordan Neely stuff? I don't know what
we could talk about on Monday and see how everybody reacts to it. I mean, I don't know if you want to give your just opinion about.
No, I think that's going to take a while. We sort of mentioned the Jordan Neely thing. When I mentioned the Cuban guy who was not, mentally all there. But yeah, that's going to get everybody riled up. We're definitely going to talk about it. Yeah, so.
All right.
We'll talk about it.
I think we've gotten all the super rays. We have gotten all the super rays. Death to Tyrants, left smile. Life is beautiful. Another one. two super rumbles or rumble rants, fam, today over there. A decent amount of people hanging on out on YouTube, Rockfin, the whole 9 yards, guys. Thank you so much for all your support. We'll be back on Monday. Monday, we're supposed to have Ahmed Cabello on. So we'll see how that's going, fam. And that should be interesting. A lot of shit in Chad, a lot of shit in the Sudan, a lot of stuff that's going on over right there. And we got the guy on the ground. He is, I believe, is in Nairobi, fam. So we're going to get some great information come Monday. And yeah, so we have some other guests planned throughout the week. We haven't confirmed, but we'll see. We're going to try to make next Friday a big day, have a bunch of panels, have some fun, kind of celebrate going on close to 6 years at the Convo Couch, do that sort of thing. So stay tuned. We'll have more information. Anything else before we get on out of here, fam?
No, I'll be on the news desk tomorrow in a few hours for you
I
guys.
know, right? You gotta get
Later
out of here.
today
Sorry
for you
for
guys.
so long.
I gotta go to bed.
RFK section today was just out of the blue. We just started talking. We started doing our thing.
Yeah, well,
Next
Kim,
thing
you go yell at Kim. Give Kim a call.
No,
next
you
time.
yell at Kim. I'm yelling. You yell at Wyatt.
Tell Kim we'll do a panel, me, her, and Wyatt, and somebody that agrees with me too, because that's not fair. Like all of you, like there's a few people that made some good points. I forget. I shared it earlier or something. I'll find somebody.
You let me know.
But yeah,
And we'll-
it's
Wednesday would be a great day for that. So that's it for today from not from Florida, not Cuba, Pasta Jardula.
where you at?
What do you mean?
Not from Florida? Not from Cuba?
Not from Cuba, from Florida.
Oh, from Florida. Okay. I was confused. From Moscow. From Russia with love. Oh, guys. Wait, we're doing something Monday with Ahmed, and then Tuesday I'll be out in the streets.
Oh, that's right. Can you give them a message for me?
I love China.
Let them know.
Yeah, also I want to talk about Monday China. China's discovered the US is spying on China. And everybody else. They literally just reinforced everything we already know. Water is wet. The CIA has overthrown governments all over the world. Yes, we know. Thank you,
Fake
China.
news.
So anyway, guys. All right, good night. I mean, good morning, good day. Whatever. I'm
We'll see you
tired.
later,
Goodbye.
guys. We're out of here. Combo out. Come on.